9 retail chains, thousands of locations, and somewhere in that list is a store you walked into this year and assumed would always be there. In 2026, analysts estimate nearly 8,000 American stores will close. That's not a recession number. That's a structural collapse. And it's happening to brands that once seemed untouchable. By the time we reach number 1, you'll understand why no retail name, no matter how familiar, no matter how long it's been on your street, is actually safe anymore. Here's the part that most people get wrong about retail closures. They hear a brand is closing stores and they think, struggling company, bad management, maybe they deserved it. But the chains on today's list aren't all struggling because of bad decisions. Many of them made the same decisions they'd been making for decades. The problem is that the ground shifted underneath them. E-commerce didn't just take some market share. It fundamentally changed how Americans decide where to spend their money. A store that once benefited from simply being visible, from being the only option in a 10-mile radius, now competes against every retailer on the planet every time a customer opens their phone. Add rising rents on long-term leases signed before the pandemic, add labor costs that have climbed steadily, add a middle-class consumer who is simultaneously spending less on physical goods and more on experiences, subscriptions, and digital purchases. The result is a retail landscape where brands that survived the 2008 recession, survived the COVID shutdowns, and even survived Amazon's early dominance are now quietly, steadily disappearing from the American map. Let's count them down. Number 9, American Eagle. The mall staple announced plans to close up to 35 additional stores in early 2026, and that number is widely expected to grow as lease reviews continue through the year. American Eagle isn't a brand in crisis in the traditional sense. It still generates billions in annual revenue. Its Aerie subsidiary has been one of the few genuine success stories in teen apparel over the past 5 years. But the core American Eagle brand is caught in a trap that dozens of mall-based retailers have fallen into before it. The stores that made sense in 2005, anchored in regional malls, counting on foot traffic, built around the idea that teenagers would show up and browse, simply don't perform the same way in 2026. Teen spending has moved. Social media-driven fast fashion brands offer trend cycles that American Eagle's sourcing model can't match on price, and the malls themselves are generating less traffic, which means even stores that were profitable 3 years ago are now marginal. 35 closures sounds manageable. But American Eagle has already been closing stores steadily for years, and each round of closures narrows the remaining portfolio of locations that can carry the brand's physical presence. The question for American Eagle isn't whether it survives, it almost certainly does. The question is whether the mall-based version of the brand that most people grew up with survives, and the answer to that is looking increasingly unlikely. Number 8, Bath & Body Works. 92 stores closed in 2026 alone. The company has been emphatic that it remains committed to brick-and-mortar retail, and that's technically true. But 92 closures in a single year, while simultaneously opening far fewer new locations, means the network is shrinking. Bath & Body Works built its identity on something that should have been immune to e-commerce, the in-store sensory experience. You walk in, you smell the candles, you try the lotions, you leave with 3 things you didn't plan to buy. That model worked extraordinarily well through the 2000s, but it has 2 vulnerabilities that are now fully exposed. First, the product itself became a category. Dozens of competitors, from Target's in-house brands to direct-to-consumer fragrance companies built entirely on TikTok, now offers similar products at lower prices without requiring a mall visit. Second, the customer who reliably made impulse purchases at Bath & Body Works is under spending pressure. When discretionary budgets tighten, the candle and lotion category gets cut faster than almost anything else. 92 closures isn't a sign that Bath & Body Works is collapsing. It's a sign that the profitable version of the brand is smaller than the company built itself to be, and the shrinking has to happen whether leadership wants it or not. Number 7, GameStop. More than 470 stores closing to start 2026. That number keeps revising upward, and the company has framed it as a deliberate de-densification strategy, which is a corporate way of saying, we built too many stores for a world that no longer needs them. GameStop's story is one of the strangest in modern retail. The meme stock moment in 2021 bought the company time and capital it almost certainly didn't deserve based on its fundamentals alone. And to GameStop's credit, it used some of that time and money to pay down debt and stabilize its balance sheet. But it never solved the core problem. Physical video game retail has been in structural decline since digital downloads became the default. Microsoft, PlayStation, and Nintendo have all leaned harder into digital distribution. The concept of going to a store to buy a game disc is genuinely foreign to the generation now entering peak gaming age. GameStop tried. It piloted collectibles, it tested graded trading cards, it explored crypto and NFTs at a time when that seemed like the future. None of it produced a new business model capable of sustaining over 1,000 retail locations. 470 closures leaves GameStop still operating hundreds of stores, but each closure makes the remaining ones harder to justify. At some point, the fixed costs of running any retail network require a minimum scale to absorb. GameStop is approaching the edge of that threshold. Number 6. Kohl's. Hundreds of store closures reviewed. Partnerships with Sephora that generated real traffic. Multiple CEO changes, a rejected takeover offer, activist investor pressure, and still, quarter after quarter, Kohl's produces results that fail to demonstrate a path back to the growth the company once represented. Kohl's is the department store chain built specifically for the American middle class. Off-mall locations, accessible price points, national brands mixed with private labels. It was designed to be the sensible choice, not aspirational, not discount, just reliable. That positioning worked for decades, but the middle-class consumer who drove Kohl's growth is facing a squeeze from both sides. Discount retailers like TJX and Ross offer similar products at lower prices. Target has moved upmarket in ways that compete directly with Kohl's core offering. And Amazon has made the act of driving to a store to buy branded apparel feel like an unnecessary step. Kohl's isn't closing in the way that GameStop or Eddie Bauer is closing, but a chain that keeps shrinking its store base year after year, keeps restructuring its leadership, and keeps failing to demonstrate sustainable traffic recovery is on a trajectory that ends in a fundamentally different and smaller company than the one that existed 5 years ago. Before we get to the top 5, let's pause on something. Every chain we've named so far is still technically operating, still opening some stores, still running promotions, still posting on social media. The next 5 are different. These are the brands where the damage isn't a question of market share or foot traffic trends. These are closures that are definitive, bankruptcies that are filed, and in some cases, entire brand histories that are ending permanently. Number 5. Macy's. Up to 150 stores closing by the end of 2026. This is a company that has been executing a deliberate contraction for years, pulling resources into its highest-performing locations, investing in e-commerce, and allowing underperforming stores to quietly exit. But Macy's closures feel different from the others because of what Macy's represents. This is a brand that has been part of the American retail identity for over a century and a half. Its Thanksgiving Day Parade is a national institution. Its flagship in Herald Square in Manhattan is one of the most visited retail destinations in the world. And yet the chain is systematically dismantling itself, location by location, in cities and suburbs across the country. 150 closures means communities losing anchor stores that have been present for generations. It means shopping malls losing their primary draw, which accelerates the collapse of the smaller tenants around them. The ripple effect of a Macy's closure extends far beyond the single building. Macy's leadership insists this is transformation, not retreat. They may be right. The company might emerge leaner and more focused. But the Macy's that closes 150 stores is not the same Macy's that opened them. And for the towns losing those locations, the distinction doesn't matter much. Number 4. Eddie Bauer. All 175 stores in the United States and Canada closed by April 30th, 2026. A bankruptcy auction scheduled for March to sell the retail operations was canceled after no buyers stepped forward. Gift cards stopped being honored within days of that announcement. Eddie Bauer is a 90-year-old American brand. It equipped explorers. It made the down jacket a mainstream product. It was worn by people who actually went outdoors, and later by people who simply wanted to project the idea that they did. The brand survived multiple owners. It survived previous bankruptcies. It survived a retail environment that had already killed dozens of its contemporaries. It did not survive 2026. The collapse is fast and final in a way that even experienced retail observers found jarring. One week there is talk of a buyer. The next week the auction is canceled and the stores are in liquidation. Customers with gift cards are notified they have days to use them or lose them. That abruptness, the speed with which 90 years of brand history becomes a liquidation sale, is its own kind of statement about how little runway struggling retailers have left when the math stops working. Number 3, Francesca's. All 400 locations closed by March 2026. The company had filed for bankruptcy in 2020, emerged from that process, and then failed to build a sustainable business in the years that followed. Francesca's built its model around small-format boutique stores in malls and lifestyle centers, offering women's clothing, jewelry, and gifts at accessible mid-market price points. The format worked when malls were full and browsing was how people found new brands. In a world where Instagram and TikTok surface new brands directly to consumers' phones, the value of a small boutique in a fading mall approaches zero. 400 stores is a significant physical footprint. These locations span dozens of states, thousands of employees, and communities where Francesca's was often one of the few women's specialty retailers left after earlier waves of closures had thinned out the competition. All of it gone. Not reduced, not restructured, gone. For the customers who built habits around those stores, there is no replacement announcement, no transition plan, no successor brand stepping in to fill the space. The stores close, the inventory liquidates, and the storefronts become empty. The next tenant, if one comes at all, will sell something completely different. Number 2, Saks Global. Chapter 11. Filed in January 2026 with approximately $3.4 billion in funded debt. The combined entity that brought together Saks Fifth Avenue, Neiman Marcus, and Saks Off Fifth under one parent collapsed in ways that observers had been predicting for more than a year. 8 Saks Fifth Avenue locations closing. Approximately 57 Saks Off Fifth locations shutting down, the entire Neiman Marcus last call outlet chain being eliminated. This is not a story about discount retail struggling. This is about an attempted luxury consolidation failing to produce the financial structure needed to service its debt. The consequences extend far beyond the brand names. Vendors, some of them small designers who had built their businesses around access to Saks and Neiman Marcus buyers, are left with unpaid invoices and interrupted relationships. The luxury retail segment was supposed to be insulated from the trends killing mid-market retail. Wealthy consumers aren't as price-sensitive. The in-store experience still matters at the high end, but luxury retail is not immune to debt. And $3.4 billion in obligations combined with a softening in high-end. Number 1, Rite Aid. 1,240 stores closed. The largest retail bankruptcy of 2026, and it happened to the pharmacy chain that existed on the corner of more American neighborhoods than almost any other brand. Rite Aid had already filed for bankruptcy once before. It emerged from that process believing it had restructured enough to survive. It had not. The second filing confirmed what the first should have made clear. The fundamental economics of running a large pharmacy chain in 2026 are broken. Reimbursement rates from pharmacy benefit managers have been squeezed to the point where filling prescriptions generates margins that cannot support the overhead of thousands of physical locations. Front-of-store retail competes against dollar stores and online delivery on one side and CVS and Walgreens on the other. Rite Aid was not a niche retailer. It was not a boutique. It was not a mall chain dependent on foot traffic trends. It was a pharmacy, a category that most people would have assumed was recession-proof, pandemic-proof, and e-commerce resistant. None of those assumptions held. 1,240 closures affect every kind of American community: urban, suburban, rural. For residents in underserved areas where Rite Aid was sometimes the only accessible pharmacy within miles, the closure creates a genuine access problem that won't be solved by a competitor stepping in, because the economics that broke Rite Aid are the same economics that make those locations unattractive to everyone else. If a pharmacy chain with over 1,000 locations can collapse completely in the span of a single bankruptcy cycle, what exactly is safe? 9 chains, thousands of locations, and 2026 isn't over yet. Analysts tracking store closures are projecting nearly 8,000 shutdowns this year. The ones we've covered today are the biggest names, but behind them are hundreds of smaller chains, regional brands, specialty retailers, independent operators, going through the same math and reaching the same conclusions. The structural forces driving these closures are not reversing. E-commerce adoption keeps climbing. Lease costs in many markets remain elevated. Labor costs aren't coming down. And the American consumer has fundamentally shifted how they allocate their discretionary spending. What comes next is a retail landscape with fewer stores, fewer brands, and fewer physical destinations. Whether that's better or worse depends on where you sit, as a consumer with Amazon Prime and a phone, or as a resident of a community that just lost its last department store anchor. Tomorrow we're looking at something different, not what's closing, but what's replacing it. The brands winning in this environment, and the uncomfortable questions their success raises. Hit subscribe before that video drops, because the story of American retail in 2026 is still being written, and the next chapter starts sooner than you think. The story of American retail in 2026 is still being written, and the next chapter starts sooner than you think.